Let me say something that's going to sound wrong at first. The reason you feel tired, the reason your drive has dropped, the reason you wake up at 3 a.m. and stare at the ceiling, it is not because you're getting older. Let me say that again. It is not because you're getting older. Now, I know what you've been told. You've been told that after 50, this is just what happens, that the energy fades, that the sharpness goes, that the passion in the bedroom, in the boardroom, in the backyard, that it all just gradually dims, like a light bulb slowly dying out. And you've probably even started to believe it. You've made peace with it. You've adjusted your expectations. You've told yourself, hey, I'm not 30 anymore. This is normal. But here's what I need you to understand. Normal is not the same as inevitable. There is a massive difference between what's common and what's biological law. And what you're experiencing right now, the fatigue, the reduced potency, the shallow, broken sleep, the foggy mornings, the lack of that fire you used to have, that is common. But it is not locked in. It is not permanent. And for the vast majority of men over 50, it is reversible. My name is Dr. Sarah Whitman. I've spent over a decade practicing urology and men's health, and I've sat across from thousands of men exactly like you, who came into my office convinced that what they were experiencing was just the cost of getting older. And in almost every single case, what they were actually experiencing was a deficiency, a specific, correctable, biological deficiency that nobody had ever told them about. And today, I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to show you one nutrient, one single vitamin that when taken correctly at the right time of night, does something remarkable inside your body. It doesn't just patch one symptom. It reaches down into the core engine of your male biology, and it restarts systems that have been running on empty for years. We're talking deeper sleep. Real, restorative, deep sleep. The kind where you wake up and actually feel like you slept. We're talking about potency, and I mean that word in its fullest sense. Not just sexual function, though yes, that too. I'm talking about the potency of energy, of motivation, of physical strength, of mental sharpness. And we're talking about vigor, that feeling of being alive, of having something in the tank, of waking up and actually looking forward to what the day holds. No prescriptions, no injections, no extreme protocols. Just one key nutrient taken at the right time, supported by a small handful of natural compounds that stack together in a way that most doctors never talk about. But before I get there, before I tell you exactly what this is, I need you to understand why you got here. Because unless you understand the biological mechanism behind what's happening to you, you'll take my advice today, and then 2 weeks from now, you'll abandon it. You won't feel like it's working. You'll go back to your old habits. So stay with me, because what I'm about to explain in the next few minutes is going to completely reframe the way you think about your own body. Part 2. The core biological mechanism. I want you to picture a factory. Not a modern, clean, automated factory. I'm talking about an old school factory, the kind that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Loud, busy, producing enormous amounts of output. This factory has one master control room, and inside that control room, there's one chief operator, and that chief operator's name is testosterone. Now, before you roll your eyes, because I know you've heard the testosterone conversation before, I need you to hear me out, because this isn't the conversation you've had before. We're not going to talk about injections or synthetic hormones. We're going to talk about why testosterone drops, and it's not the reason most people think. See, testosterone doesn't just fall off a cliff after 50 for no reason. It's not like your body suddenly forgets how to make it. The factory is still there. The equipment is still there. The workers are still showing up. The problem is the fuel. Your body makes testosterone through a long chain of chemical reactions. It starts in your brain, specifically in a tiny gland called the pituitary, which sends a signal down to the testes, which then begin the production process. And that process requires specific raw materials, specific inputs, specific nutrients that your body cannot manufacture on its own. And here's the thing that most men over 50 are never told. The standard modern diet, even a relatively healthy one, is chronically short on these inputs. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's that the nutrients your testosterone-making machinery depends on most are the exact nutrients that modern food processing strips away, that stress depletes faster than you can replace, and that after age 40, your gut absorbs with dramatically reduced efficiency. So, picture this. Your factory is still standing. The machines are still capable of full production, but the fuel trucks stop showing up. And every day, the reserves get a little lower. And so production drops. Just a little at first. And then more. And then more. And what does that look like on the outside? It looks like waking up tired, even after a full night of sleep. It looks like that midday crash that hits you at 2 p.m. like a wall. It looks like erections that are less firm, less reliable, less spontaneous. It looks like that mental fog. That sense of struggling to concentrate, to find words, to stay sharp in a meeting. It looks like less drive, less aggression, less want, less of that masculine hunger that used to push you forward. It looks, in other words, like aging. But it's not aging, it's deprivation. And here's the kicker. Here's the part that really should make you angry. This isn't information that's hidden in some obscure journal. Research on this has been building for over 3 decades. We have study after study after study documenting exactly which nutrients are critical for male hormonal production, for sleep architecture, for circulatory function. But nobody teaches this. Not in medical school, not in your annual physical, not from the television commercials that want to sell you the quick pharmaceutical fix. So let's change that right now. Part 3. Why the obvious solution fails. Now, I want to talk about something that might be a little uncomfortable, because there's a good chance you've already tried to fix this. You've done things. You've made efforts. You've changed your diet. Maybe you started exercising. Maybe you cut back on alcohol. Maybe you even tried some supplements, the ones with the flashy marketing and the big promises. And maybe you saw a little improvement, a little bump, and then it faded, or it never really came at all. And so you concluded one of 2 things. Either supplements don't work, or your body is just too far gone. Neither of those conclusions is correct. Here's the real problem, and I want to use an analogy that I think will make this click for you immediately. Imagine you have a car, a really good car, but it's been sitting in a garage for a few years, and when you try to start it, it sputters. It barely turns over. The battery is weak, the fuel lines are gummed up, the engine is cold. Now what do? You could put premium gasoline in it. That's not going to hurt. But if the battery is dead, premium gas doesn't matter. You're still not going anywhere. You could replace the tires. Great idea. But a car with 4 fresh tires and a dead battery still won't move. You could even get a new set of spark plugs. Excellent. Still not enough on its own. The point is, when multiple systems are degraded simultaneously, fixing just one of them doesn't get you where you want to go. You need to address the system comprehensively. This is why the isolated approach fails. This is why guys take zinc and feel nothing. This is why they start exercising and don't get the hormonal boost they expected. This is why they clean up their diet and still feel flat. Because when your body is nutrient depleted, when your sleep architecture is broken, when your circulation is sluggish, and when your testosterone production pathway is clogged, fixing one thing is like replacing the spark plugs on a car with a dead battery and flat tires. The missing piece, the piece that makes everything else work, is what I'm about to share with you. And the good news? Once you give your body the right inputs, in the right combination, at the right time, the response is often faster and more dramatic than men expect. Not overnight, but within days and weeks, not months and years. So let's get into exactly what this looks like. Part 4. Ingredient number 1, vitamin D. 3, the Awakener. The one vitamin. The one nutrient that I put at the center of every men's health protocol I've built in the last decade is vitamin D3. And before you say, I've heard about vitamin D, let me stop you, because I almost guarantee you haven't heard it framed the way I'm about to frame it. Because most conversations about vitamin D talk about bone health and immune function. And while those things are absolutely real, they completely miss the most important thing that vitamin D does for a man over 50. Here's what you need to understand. Vitamin D is not actually a vitamin. Technically, biochemically, it is a hormone, a steroid hormone to be precise, and that distinction matters enormously. Because almost every cell in your body has a receptor for vitamin D. Your brain cells, your heart cells, your muscle cells, your testicular cells, specifically the Leydig cells, which are the primary manufacturers of testosterone. Every single one of them has a docking port for vitamin D, like a lock waiting for a key. Here's what studies show. Men with optimal vitamin D levels, not just normal levels, but truly optimal levels, have significantly higher testosterone than men who are deficient. In controlled research, supplementing vitamin D in deficient men produced measurable, meaningful increases in total and free testosterone over the course of just a few months. But it goes deeper than that. Vitamin D also directly modulates your sleep architecture. Specifically, it influences the production and regulation of melatonin and serotonin, two of the key neurochemicals that control your sleep-wake cycle. Men who are vitamin D deficient tend to have fragmented, shallow sleep. They cycle through sleep stages poorly. They don't spend enough time in the deep, slow-wave sleep phase, which is precisely the phase where your body does its most important repair work, where growth hormone surges, where your cells regenerate, where testosterone is largely produced. You've been sleeping, but you haven't been recovering, and this is why vitamin D taken at night, not in the morning, but at night, roughly 30 to 60 minutes before bed, has a uniquely powerful effect. Because when you take it at night, it enters your bloodstream during the very window when your body needs it most. It supports the neurochemical cascade that initiates deep sleep. It prepares the hormonal environment for the testosterone-producing work your body does during the night. Now, and this is critical, most men are severely deficient. Not a little low, severely deficient. The average American man over 50 has vitamin D levels that many functional medicine practitioners would classify as deficient when held against optimal, not just adequate benchmarks. And here's why. After age 40, your skin's ability to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight drops significantly. Simultaneously, your gut's ability to absorb dietary vitamin D also declines. And the foods that contain meaningful amounts of vitamin D are foods most men over 50 don't eat in significant quantities: wild-caught fatty fish, organ meats, cod liver oil. So even if you're spending time outdoors, even if you're eating reasonably well, there's a very good chance your vitamin D levels are running at a fraction of what your body needs to perform at full capacity. Now, dosing matters here, and I want to be specific. Research suggests that for men over 50, doses in the range of 3,000 to 5,000 IU of D3, not D2, specifically D3, taken at night with a meal that contains some fat, because D3 is fat-soluble, meaning it needs fat to absorb properly, can begin producing noticeable effects within 2 to 3 weeks. What does noticeable mean? First, sleep. Most men notice this first. Deeper sleep, fewer wake-ups in the middle of the night, waking up feeling more rested than they have in years. Not immediately, it takes time for your neurochemistry to rebalance, but within 2 to 4 weeks, the sleep quality shift becomes hard to ignore. Then, energy. A real, sustained energy. Not the jittery, artificial energy of caffeine. The underlying baseline energy that comes from a body that is actually recovering during sleep and running its hormonal machinery properly. And then, typically around weeks 4 to 8, the other things begin to change. Mood lifts, motivation returns, drive in all its forms starts to come back online. But here's the thing I want you to hear clearly. Vitamin D3 alone is powerful, but it is not enough on its own, because D3 is the ignition. It's the spark. And to make that spark do what it needs to do, you need to protect it, amplify it, and stabilize it. That's where the second piece comes in. Part 5. Ingredient number 2, magnesium glycinate, the protector, the multiplier. Vitamin D3 is the ignition. Magnesium is the engine. Let me explain what I mean by that. Vitamin D3, when it enters your body, goes through a conversion process. It starts as an inactive form and has to be converted first by your liver, then by your kidneys into its active, usable form. And here's something most people never hear. That conversion process requires magnesium. Without sufficient magnesium, the D3 you take cannot fully activate. It's like pouring fuel into an engine that's missing the catalytic converter. The fuel is there, but it's not doing its job. And guess what the second most common mineral deficiency in men over 50 is? Magnesium. Studies estimate that somewhere between 50% and 70% of Americans are not getting enough magnesium. And the reasons are similar to D3. Modern food processing strips magnesium from grains. Chronic stress depletes magnesium reserves at an accelerated rate. And older men simply absorb minerals less efficiently through the gut. But magnesium does far more than just activate D3. Let me walk you through what this mineral actually does. First, sleep. Magnesium is one of the most powerful natural sleep regulators known to science. It works by activating your GABA receptors. GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter in your brain, meaning it's the chemical that tells your nervous system to calm down, to stop running, to shift from the sympathetic fight or flight state into the parasympathetic rest and restore state. After 50, most men are running in a state of chronic, low-grade stress activation. Your cortisol patterns are disrupted. Your nervous system doesn't shift gears cleanly. You get into bed and your brain keeps running. You can feel the physical tiredness, but the mental chatter won't stop. You can't get comfortable. You finally drift off and then wake up at 3 a.m. with your mind already spinning. That is not insomnia. That is a nervous system that hasn't been given the tools to shut down properly, and magnesium is one of the primary tools it needs. Second, testosterone. Magnesium doesn't just help D3 activate, it plays its own independent role in testosterone production. Research shows that magnesium directly influences free testosterone levels, the form of testosterone that your body can actually use. See, most testosterone in your body is bound to a protein called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. Bound testosterone is unavailable. Magnesium has been shown to reduce the binding activity of SHBG, which means more of your existing testosterone becomes free and bioavailable. Think of it this way. You have testosterone, but it's locked in a warehouse. Magnesium is the key that unlocks the warehouse and gets the product moving. Third, nitric oxide and circulation. This is the one that most men really appreciate when they understand it. Magnesium is a critical cofactor in the production of nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for blood vessel dilation, for circulation, for that full, healthy vascular response that underlies erection quality and overall cardiovascular performance. As men age, nitric oxide production declines. The endothelium, the inner lining of your blood vessels, becomes less responsive. The pipes, so to speak, don't expand and contract the way they used to. This affects everything: cardiovascular stamina, mental clarity, and yes, absolutely, sexual function. Magnesium helps restore nitric oxide signaling. It's not a miracle, but it's one of the most fundamental repairs you can make to a depleted vascular system. Now, form matters enormously with magnesium. I need to stress this. The magnesium in cheap supplements, magnesium oxide, for example, is poorly absorbed and largely wasted. What you want for sleep and hormonal support is magnesium glycinate, magnesium bound to the amino acid glycine. This form is highly bioavailable, crosses the blood-brain barrier efficiently, and has the added benefit of glycine itself, which is independently shown to improve sleep quality and reduce cortisol. Typical effective dose for men over 50, 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate, taken at night with or shortly after your vitamin D3. Together, D3 and magnesium glycinate, these two compounds form the foundation. The core stack. They work through overlapping and complementary pathways, amplifying each other's effects in ways that neither can achieve alone. But we're not done, because there are a few more compounds I want to layer on top of this foundation, each working through a different system that turn this from a solid protocol into something that feels genuinely transformative. Part 6. Additional Synergistic Boosters. Systems Stacking. This is where we go from good to exceptional. What I've described so far, D3 and magnesium, is the foundation. It's the structure. If you did only this, you would notice a real difference. But there are 4 additional compounds that I consistently recommend to men over 50, each working through a different biological pathway that stack together into what I call a comprehensive male restoration protocol. Let me walk you through each one. Booster number 1. Zinc, the testosterone guardian. Zinc is the mineral that your testosterone production machinery cannot function without. It acts as a gatekeeper at multiple steps in the hormonal production pathway. It inhibits the aromatase enzyme, the enzyme responsible for converting testosterone into estrogen. As men age, aromatase activity increases, and more testosterone gets converted away. Zinc puts a brake on that process. Zinc also directly supports the function of the Leydig cells in the testes, the cells that produce testosterone in response to the pituitary signals. Without adequate zinc, those cells respond sluggishly. The signal comes in, but the response is muted. Research in men who were zinc deficient is striking. Restoring zinc to optimal levels produced significant increases in testosterone over just a few weeks. It didn't just bump the numbers, it restored the entire cascade. The problem, again, is that zinc deficiency is extremely common in older men. Red meat, shellfish, particularly oysters, are the best dietary sources, but these aren't foods most men eat in sufficient quantities. Exercise further depletes zinc through sweat. Alcohol accelerates zinc excretion. By the time a man reaches his 50s and 60s, zinc reserves are often critically low. Form matters here too. Zinc bisglycinate or zinc picolinate are the preferred forms: high absorption, low gut irritation. Dose: 25 to 30 milligrams at night, taken with your D3 and magnesium stack. One important note: zinc and magnesium compete for absorption when taken in very high doses together. At the doses I've described, this is not a clinically meaningful concern, but take them with food to ensure optimal absorption of both. Booster number 2. Ashwagandha root extract, the cortisol killer. If zinc is the testosterone guardian, ashwagandha is the stress shield. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, is testosterone's direct enemy. There is a biological seesaw relationship between these two hormones. When cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. It's not a coincidence, it's a design feature. From an evolutionary standpoint, when your body perceives that you're in danger, it redirects resources away from reproduction and toward survival. The problem is that chronic modern stress, work stress, financial stress, relationship stress, the low-grade anxiety of being permanently connected to a news feed that tells you the world is on fire, keeps cortisol chronically elevated. Not through the roof necessarily, just elevated enough to suppress your testosterone production, day after day, after day after day, for months and years. Ashwagandha, specifically a high-concentration root extract standardized for withanalydes, is one of the most well-studied adaptogenic herbs in the world. Research confirms that consistent use of ashwagandha reduces cortisol levels meaningfully. It modulates the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the command and control system for your stress response. And the downstream effect on testosterone is significant. Multiple studies in men found that daily ashwagandha supplementation produced meaningful increases in total and free testosterone, as well as improvements in sperm quality, muscle strength, and self-reported sexual function. But beyond testosterone, ashwagandha is one of the most reliable sleep depth enhancers I've encountered in the literature. It increases GABA-like activity in the brain, reduces racing thoughts, and helps the nervous system complete that transition from high alert to rest mode. Men who take it consistently report that they fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Dose: 300 to 600 milligrams of a standardized root extract. Look for KSM 66 or Sensoril on the label. These are the most extensively researched forms taken at night. It's slightly sedating in a good way, which makes evening the ideal time. Booster number 3, L-arginine or L-citrulline, the circulation restorer. I mentioned nitric oxide earlier in the context of magnesium.